Well, hi everyone, it's Cutlass Candi, and I'm here in my kitchen at the Pirate Glam Pad here on Pawleys Island. And this is a special time of year always for me, and I'm excited once again to bring you a video of moi producing the infamous recipe that I produce every year and have been for, golly, I can't even count how many videos that I've done and how many years that I have been doing this. But this is the infamous making of my apple pie moonshine. And before I share the secret of the recipe, I want to talk to you a little bit about how all of what I'm going to show you came into existence. So this year is very special. You know, this past September, my dad, James Willard Nichols, passed away. And I have to tell you that when I was looking back on my external hard drive to research how many videos that I've made sharing this recipe in the past, it was really interesting because I think in 2014, I actually did the toast at the final end to my dad and also to my grandfather, James Ira Nichols, who actually was the moonshiner in our family. And I want to tell a little history about that. I particularly in that video said that I was thankful to my father for sharing the moonshine history of the family all these years. And not only is it on my dad's side, but it's also over on my mother's side, but more prevalent on my father's side, just because my grandfather did spend time in prison for making moonshine in Henry County. So let's talk about that. A lot of you all don't know who I am, but my real name is Candi Nichols. I have actually produced a lot of videos doing this particular recipe, and they've had millions actually of views. And I've actually had to take them down from YouTube because I didn't sign up to get paid for them, and everybody kept stealing them and using them over there on their own sites. So I actually took them down. My stepson at one point when I was married said, "You need to be paid for those. You're getting way too many views." And I'm like, "Oh, well, okay." So anyway, maybe we'll put this one out there for pay. But until I do that, enjoy the video. So the Nichols family, my dad, his side of the family, they were raised, and my father was raised in Ridgeway, Virginia, which is right outside of the Martinsville Speedway in Martinsville, if you all know where that is. If not, look it up. And my mother was raised in Snow Creek, Virginia. Now, the way this all goes down is that those two places are approximately about 30 minutes from one another. And my dad, his father, James Ira, produced and had his own still there in Ridgeway, back in the property area that my brother and I actually have ownership of right at this moment. And Grandpa would make liquor and put it underneath of the seats of a vehicle that looked pretty much like this. Now, my father gave me this several years ago because he knew how much I enjoyed, talking and telling the story of our moonshine family. And he gave me this, and he said, when I was a little boy, my dad would put the liquor underneath the seats of a vehicle like this and put us kids. My dad had a brother, Fred, and a sister named Hazel. They were all close in age. He'd put them in the back seats, and he'd sit them in the car so that when he traveled down the road in the dark, that the police would not pull him over or anybody would be suspicious because he had the kids in the car. and he would go and sell his liquor. And my dad was always very nervous and, very fearful back in those days, as he should have been, because he knew that it was against the law to run liquor. But Grandpa made a living from making moonshine. Now, he would eventually have his still busted and spend time in prison for it. And then, of course, he got out and continued to make moonshine, I might tell you. And that's what was going on over in Henry County. And then my mom, being raised over in Snow Creek, Virginia, in Franklin County, Virginia, she as well had, my grandfather didn't make it, but he certainly took drink. And the neighbors that lived not far down the street from my mom, their names were the Bondurants. Now, if you don't know anything about moonshine, you have to have an understanding that Franklin County, Virginia is the wettest county in the United States. It is known to be the most highly produced county in the United States for producing moonshine. And the movie Lawless was made back several years ago, and it was the history of the Bondurant family, who they actually were big-time moonshiners. And my mother actually was very good friends with Forrest Bondurant's daughter. And as it would have it, that movie would pretty much set that area there in a little bit of a history-making, I guess, place for moonshine. So please Google the movie Lawless and rent it, because it's a really good movie. A lot of the people from Franklin County say that well, it's not all true, but I can tell you right now that yes, it is. It is very close to being all true. And it's a very good movie to show you how people made a living back then, and it was a very dangerous way to make a living. Corn liquor was something that was highly sought after, and it supported a lot of families back in those days. And so to continue the path of keeping my history alive, we came up with a recipe that I don't like corn liquor. Moonshine, I don't like it plain. It's extremely strong, but my grandfather Nichols made a very good product. And after he passed, and I would continue to get it from up in the county, in the country, as we would call it. I would continue to get it and use it as a basis for my recipe. But as time went on, I made the decision that instead of having to worry about the corn liquor and not knowing maybe who it came from, I would find a distillery who sold it in a basic store, liquor store, so I could, go in and purchase it and come out and make the apple pie recipe on my own. So I did a really interesting tour back in 2012. And I went around to a lot of different distilleries, and I found, in my personal opinion, the closest thing. It was a new distillery to moonshine. And hang on just a minute. Let me grab one of my quarts here. This is Palmetto Moonshine. And who would have known that a few years later, I would end up being, a resident in South Carolina, even though I live in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. This isn't the first time I've lived in South Carolina, but here I am today in 2020 making the apple pie moonshine recipe with Palmetto Moonshine straight from South Carolina. Now, this is a product that, in my personal opinion, tastes so much like my grandfather's, and I have tried a lot of others. I can only tell you, I've been to their distilleries and I've tried a lot of others, even Junior Johnson's brand, which my grandfather and my cousin, my aunts on my mother's side, they're very close to Junior. He was a good friend of ours before he passed away, and I didn't care for his moonshine. I didn't care for Old Smoky or Popcorn Sutton or Firefly or any of these other ones. This moonshine, and the guys down there at the distillery know, this is the moonshine that I support and tell you right now it's 101 proof and it is very, very good. So I use this as the basis for my apple pie moonshine recipe. So with Father passing away, my dad passing away this year, I specifically wanted to share the video and hope that you might go out and make some yourself. I do sell it. So if you live in the local area and you don't want to go out and make it, but you want to try it, call me. I'll sell you a pint. It's really good. So let's talk about how to make it. It's very simple. The first thing you want to do is you want to go to the grocery store, and I just went to Buy Low, and you want to get yourself a sleeve of pint jars. And these are, mason ball jars, and they come in a sleeve of 12. And you're going to want to grab yourself a box of those. Then you're going to want to pick up 2 types of juices. One, you're going to want to pick up 100% apple cider. And it needs to be 100% juice, apple cider. I want to make sure that you get the, not the kind that's in the dairy section, but just the kind that sits on the shelf. And you don't want it to be the cold kind that's right there in the dairy. Don't use that. Just use the kind that's on the shelf. And then you also want to get one of regular 100% apple juice. So you want to get 1 64-ounce apple juice and apple cider. Like I said, these came from Buy Low. So you want one of each. And then you want to make sure that you grab yourself some light brown sugar, a bag of light brown sugar, cinnamon, regular ground cinnamon, and a bag of cinnamon sticks. You're only going to need 2 cinnamon sticks per 1 small batch. So all you're going to need are those ingredients. And then for the basis of this particular recipe, you're going to need 2 quarts of corn liquor. This is actually, I said it was 101 proof. It's 105 proof. I was going off of my memory, and for some reason I was thinking 101, but it's 105. So you're going to want to get 2 750 ml bottles. These run most of the time at the store about $21.99 a jar. Now I make usually 2 batches, but per recipe you're going to need 2. So all you're going to want to do, and I'm going to flip this camera around, is, let me show you, because we're going to go over here to the in a large pot, you're going to want to bring to a very low simmer 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 2 cinnamon sticks, 4 cups of apple juice, and 4 cups of apple cider. And you're just going to simmer that for a couple of minutes and then cut it off. Now, right now, my product is cut off and it is now sitting cooling. Okay? Once it's cooled, all you're going to want to do is take your product and strain it through a piece of cheesecloth. That's the only other thing that you're going to need for this recipe. And I just lay my cheesecloth across another pot, and I just take the product. You can take and scoop it out with a cup and pour it over slowly, or you can just pour it directly from your pot here slowly. All you're wanting to do is strain that cinnamon in the bottom, and I take out the 2 pieces of cinnamon sticks as well. But you just don't want the cinnamon to go over into your jars, so you want to strain that. Now, this mixture needs to cool completely before we add our corn liquor, our moonshine to it, because if you put that moonshine into that hot mixture, it's going to evaporate the alcohol out of it, and we don't want to do that. And what we end up with after we let it cool down and pour our liquor in it and stir it one good time and put it in our mason jars, just transferring it over with a cup, just pour it. It ends up making 8 pint jars of beautiful apple pie moonshine. And I have to tell you, it is genuinely a pleasure to make this. People love to see you come. I tell you, I give it as gifts and people really enjoy it. It's really a wonderful product served chilled right out of the refrigerator. However, I enjoy it. Pour just a small amount into a sipping teacup and pop it in the microwave for only about 20-25 seconds. Like I said, you don't want to get it scalding hot where the alcohol evaporates out of it, but just long enough to put a nice warm heat on it so that it's warm to the taste. And I can tell you, it really is absolutely delicious. I want to do this video in honor of my father, James Willard Nichols. And, I'm going to proceed with this second batch over here, filling up my jars after it cools off. But, there's one thing for sure. When it's all said and done, the only way to know if it's good is just to taste it, right? So let's give it a try. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to prop you guys up here. And my father used to tell me, he'd say, now, Candy, when you serve the recipe, whether it's apple pie moonshine or straight out of the jar, you always open the lid and set it down in the middle of the table and let people enjoy it on their own, because it's dangerous stuff. So, to my father, Merry Christmas in heaven, and may each and every one of you have a lovely 2020 Christmas holiday. I know I will. And I'm going to cheers to my new home here on Pawleys Island. Let's see how this lovely first small batch on the beach tastes. Oh, that is divine. If you never saw the Christmas show called The Homecoming with the sisters that created the recipe. Patricia O'Neill was in it, and it was such a lovely show, and I watch it every year. But the sisters made the recipe, and the men would come to call, and they would come in their beautiful, glamorous home back in the country, and they would have the recipe out of a teacup. And so I will continue to drink mine out of a ball jar as I make my next batch. Cheers, everyone. And again, happy holiday. Enjoy the recipe. I hope to see that you've made it as well. I'm going to share the secret once again. Happy holiday. Merry Christmas, Daddy.